Hello. Last year I covered an interview between Piers Morgan and Richard Dawkins, and Piers Morgan asked two questions. One question he asked was, where did the universe come from? And where did life originate? How did life originate? And Richard Dawkins quite honestly answered, we don't know. To that, Piers Morgan said, well, I'm asking you these questions. I want to know the answers, and you can't tell me. And therefore, I'm going to go and believe in God. So this is really quite common that theists will start asking questions, particularly to atheists. Why are the constants the way they are? Why is the speed of light exactly the speed that it is? Why is gravity exactly as it is, etc., etc.? And when we say, well, we measure these things, but we don't know the answers to those questions, they will run scurrying to their Bibles um, for knowledge, for what they think is knowledge. Well, we've got the designer here. We don't need it. We've got the answers here. The speed of light is as it is. The gravitational forces are exactly as they are, because we have a God, and God designed it exactly that way. If he hadn't designed it exactly that way, there wouldn't be a universe in which life could have evolved, where we could have Christians who could worship God, typically. Okay, yeah. So Anthony, a theist, called in on the line, and he spoke to Matt and Jimmy. It was quite a long call, and he was essentially arguing the same. He would ask them questions: why is the speed of light as it is? Why have we got these constants? And it could have been other than it was, etc., etc. And it really amounted to a God of the gaps argument. Arguments from ignorance, and indeed arguments from incredulity. We heard a lot the phrase, oh, it seems to me this, oh, it seems to me that, etc. So we're going to come to the latter part of the call. I must say that we're going to hear also, he called on the following night, he's called Skep Talk. I've got a clip from that as well. We'll look at that a bit later, but let's just hear the end of the call. Here we go.
All right.
Anthony, let's ignore everything we've said. Let's ignore everything that we've said and everything that you've said. Just as an experiment.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to figure out the best way to phrase this so that it is most conducive to actually getting somewhere. If we went back in time to where we didn't have today's understanding of physics, and you were saying, and you were using some of these classical arguments for a God as a first cause, etc. Do you think that should be more compelling at that time in the past than it is today? Or do you think it's more compelling today than it would have been then? Or do you think it's equally compelling, irrespective of our knowledge of science?
I think that the argument for God is more compelling based on things we've discovered since, the Enlightenment period of science.
Now that's really bizarre, because this man is a Big Bang cosmology denier. He believes in a steady state universe, that God created it and everything is exactly the same age. So that's really bizarre, because when Big Bang cosmology became a thing, Christians were absolutely delighted, because we have a beginning. We have a beginning, and in the Bible there's a beginning. We have the Kalam cosmological argument, which is really built on Big Bang cosmology, and yet he's a Big Bang cosmology denier, and he's saying that the evidence we've got today backs up the case for a God, backs up the case for a steady state universe. It's really okay. Well, the Big Bang cosmology question is going to be discussed in the clip that I'm going to show you in a moment. But let's just finish off the call.
An exploration and things like that. Some ideas about God have been disproven. Yeah.
So you think these arguments are more compelling in the light of science? If that's the case, then why is it that the people who understand this the best tend to be less religious by far than the general public?
I think it's because they haven't thought through the philosophical. They believe that because our knowledge of the universe has expanded so greatly, and we haven't, found, a guy, sitting behind a booth to programming it all, that they've eliminated the possibility of God. But I think it's flawed philosophy, because
So he's generalizing there. He's saying that all scientists at a top level, all the physicists, Neil deGrasse Tyson, Lawrence Krauss, Stephen Hawking when he was alive, etc., they've all definitively ruled out God. I wonder how he knows that.
it's like saying you've explored every inch of a car and you haven't found a designer in the car, and so there's no designer.
Thank you, Anthony. Thank you, Anthony, for the absolute most telling cartoon dismissal of rationality ever. You think that the greatest thinkers who built cosmology, the greatest thinkers who built physics, didn't bother to spend any time thinking about or talking about God.
Yeah, just briefly on that car analogy. No, it's not like that, because it's so easy. It's so trivially easy to find out who designed a car. You can go back almost any production car model in history. You could find out who designed it. You could go and check out all the old documents about the history of the car factories, etc. And even cars that have been designed by private engineers and people who've designed their own cars, even with those you could go back and find out. And all the examples of cars we've ever seen have got designers, and this is a big this is the whole problem, because we've only got the one example of a universe with life in it, and we've got no other models on which to reach any conclusions. And this is what we're trying to answer: was the universe designed, or did it occur naturally? And as for me, I don't know. That's my position on all of these questions. I don't know. I'm waiting for the evidence. At the moment, the evidence seems to be pointing towards a universe which occurs naturally. But no, that car analogy was just rubbish.
And that they just decided that because we know so much and haven't actually found a dude, that they've just dismissed God. You have constructed the most flammable straw man.
I just like somebody's going to pull me up there and say that's a false dichotomy, because there could be other explanations. So naturally occurring universe or a design universe, or I acknowledge there could be another explanation. So no, it's not a true dichotomy. There could be another explanation out there that I'm not aware of. I just like to acknowledge that, because I know people are going to leave comments and say, Stuart, that's not a true, that's a false dichotomy. Okay, let's go on.
The history of flammable straw men, in order to dismiss the undeniable fact, that both belief in God diminishes among the people who understand science the best, and that belief in God is on decline in the general public, not because people have decided, well, if we haven't found God by now, it must not be there. What a kindergarten cartoonish straw man of reality. That allows you to dismiss the findings of science. Do you think there's a conspiracy amongst scientists to hide good evidence for God?
Yeah, I do, actually.
Yeah.
Cool. Thank you for demonstrating that you're a conspiracy theorist. That's exactly what I thought. What evidence do you have that there's a conspiracy amongst the elite scientists to hide evidence for God?
Okay, I'm stopping there. I'll tell you, I'm absolutely furious, because that was a brilliant question, and it's a question I would have asked as well. Unfortunately, Jimmy jumped in and he said, why don't you phone tomorrow? Why don't you phone SkepTalk and talk to Dr. Adair and talk about your doubts about Big Bang cosmology, etc., etc. Sadly, they never came back to this question that Matt asked: what is your evidence for this conspiracy? It was forgotten about, the call was dropped, and I'm absolutely furious that Jimmy jumped in there. When Matt asked a question, such a really good question that he asked, Jimmy should keep his mouth shut, and obviously vice versa. When a good question is asked, the time is ripe to let the caller speak. Oh, I'm so frustrated about that. Okay, so we're going to look at this other clip, and then I'll comment about that.
Yeah, the cosmic, well, Aaron mentions, was the idea that the farther we look back into the universe with these space telescopes, the less developed the galaxy should be. And this is something I brought up with Jimmy yesterday, which is that recently, and when I say recently, I mean within the last year or two, the James Webb Telescope was able to peer farther into the universe than ever before. And if I remember correctly, the scientific community was amazed to find that the farther we looked, the universe seemed to be at a much greater state of development than had been predicted, according to, statements made by Big Bang proponent theorists. So it seems to me that the evidence is kind of trending against the Big Bang cosmology.
So
I'm going to have
Anthony,
to
I
hop
know
on that and
exactly.
just squash that hard. I'm going to squash that
Yeah.
hard because every headline that has said that has been just sensational nonsense, because not a single scientist who has been publishing these results say anything about this breaking the Big Bang. What it is basically saying is our models for the development of galactic formation need revision. And the question is, what thing is it that our models are not accounting for well? Is it that we are using an incorrect model for dark matter, for example? That is still something that is very mysterious and theoretical, trying to explain it in terms of different forms of gravity. So like there's modified Newtonian dynamics, or MOND is a candidate that is used. If it is a particle, which many particle theorists try to explain dark matter with, then what kind of particle and what other properties might it have? How much does it cluster? What sort of geometry does it spread around? Those are the sorts of questions that come up. Or the questions might be, when we're doing our various computer simulations, are there issues with the way that we're running those simulations? Are we dealing with heating and cooling research? Hey, we're seeing these things with the galaxies and our computer model isn't matching with this. If we add this additional variable, does it help things match better? In other words, it might be that a bunch of the other steps in our very complicated things may not be working out so well in those particular cases. But it's still worth noting that even those galaxies that we're seeing basically them clustering up and getting bigger faster than might have been initially expected, but they still have basically the primordial abundances of the elements. We don't look back 13 billion years into the past and find stars that are like big chunks of uranium or anything like that. No, they are in the parlance of astronomers, low metallicity objects. And for astronomers, anything higher up in the periodic table than helium is called a metal, because astronomers don't want to be precise, just to piss off the chemist. You aren't seeing the sorts of things that would say, hey, there's an extra 100 billion years of history here. It's basically saying, hey, our rate of galaxy formation models aren't right. This is not an argument against the Big Bang. This is an argument that we need to do better simulations. And
okay, there we are. Yeah, so to give Anthony credit, he did actually call Skeptalk, talked to Dr. Adair, presented his doubts. They dealt with his call very well, very comprehensively. Although I must say, every point they dealt with, he then kept coming back with something else, as he did do with the point that with the new telescopes, that they can see further into the universe than ever before, and the finding that these galaxies unexpectedly were older than models accounted for. And I thought that Dr. Adair dealt with that very well. He said, yes, well, we've got to tweak. We have got to now evaluate that information. And it's not like we can throw out the whole of Big Bang cosmology, because the bulk of evidence is still there. We need to tweak and refine the model. That's all. Quite reasonable. It would be like in the theory of evolution. If we found something in nature, as we have done, we've found some unusual things. We don't throw out the entire theory. It helps us to refine the model. But if your position is you want to believe in a God, then you will lead the evidence where you want it to go. And that's exactly what he's doing. So yeah, by the end, he didn't reply to that. He had nothing to say, because the case that Dr. Adair made was so comprehensive and so convincing that there was absolutely nothing he could say, except that, oh yes, I can see that wherever you are in the universe, if you look out in any direction, for the same distance, the light from the stars is that everything to within a certain distance is the same age. He got that point, but I'm not convinced that it has debunked in his mind this steady state universe. Some people in chat were saying, oh, it's a light bulb moment. No, I don't think it was. I think he was just acknowledging that that point is correct. I think he will go on believing in a steady state universe, despite everything that's been said. So you need to stop going to Christian websites to get your information. You need to go and read proper secular science, not religiously motivated science. Okay, that's all for now. I hope you enjoyed all my analysis and comments. Goodbye.